Outback Radio 2WEB. Joining me is Matt Dickerson for Tech Talk. Good morning, Matt. How are you going?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Chris. I'm always going well, chatting to 2WB listeners about technology.
Your favourite topic. Now, Netflix, I'm a big fan, and because I've gone through a lot of the TV series on Netflix, when I'm wondering about what I want to watch next, what I normally do is type into Google, say if the TV series is Boardwalk Empire, I'll type in Boardwalk Empire and review, and then I get all the review scores. But soon I won't have to do that because there's an algorithm that's being set up in Netflix.
Exactly right. And one of the issues that we have, Chris, is we might sit around for a couple of minutes while we're catching a bit of dinner and sitting there with the kids saying, we'll just watch something quickly on Netflix and see what's there. And we've finished dinner before we've actually chosen what to watch because there are so many thousands of titles to look at. And Netflix has recognised this, and they've come up with this new shuffle play feature, and it's almost like going back to the future. It's a bit like watching TV. You just turn on Netflix, and whatever channel, whatever show is effectively playing is what you'll see. And so it's kind of that old days of the TV stations when you just turn it on and there was a TV station channel running and you just watch that. So this is in recognition of that sort of analysis paralysis that they said that people get with Netflix, where they do spend so long choosing what to watch, they run out of time to actually watch something. So it's not even just about suggestions. This one actually just starts playing it. You just turn it on, use the feature, and you just start watching whatever comes up.
That's fantastic. I think Netflix is great value for money. Now, is there any evidence that hackers are profiting from email scams?
Well, we see a lot of the things that come through about email scams, and of course we've talked about it here on 2WB before, Chris. And sometimes people think, that wouldn't happen to me, or people aren't getting away with that. Well, there's just been a Brisbane accountant who's been caught, and of course this is all alleged involvement at this stage, Chris, because no final charges, no conviction has been laid here. But the allegations are around $3.3 million has been basically laundered via this particular person's, or allegedly laundered by this particular person's business, where fake invoices are sent out. And I've actually talked to some people where this has actually happened to them, where they've sent out an invoice to someone and that person's received the invoice and they've actually sent the money to them, but it's been changed. The actual details, the bank details, have been changed in the meantime. So the person saying, where's my money? The other person at the other end says, I've paid it. And each one thinks the other one's not telling the truth, but of course they have paid it, but it's gone to someone else. And this is something that I suppose we see a little bit of now, but here's evidence where someone's being caught and going through that process with 3.3 million. Now that's just one person. So obviously there's a bit of this happening out there at the moment. And one of the things I say to people, especially if someone has an email they send through that says, please note that I've changed my bank account details, that's when I actually get on the phone and talk to someone. If it's the same bank account you've been paying into for years for a particular business you deal with, it's probably safe. But if it's someone that just suddenly changes their bank details, or they send you an invoice with no notification about change, and then they say, well, nothing's said, and they just expect you to change those details, I'd always be just talking to those people in the old-fashioned way on the telephone.
Sure. Now, what's this I hear about a robot could soon be performing a COVID-19 nose swab?
Well, Chris, I'm not sure if you've had a COVID-19 test. I'm lucky enough that I haven't had one at this stage, but I've talked to some friends of mine that have, and it sounds like a particularly unpleasant experience, basically taking a long swab, and it seems like when I've talked to people, sticking out through the back of your brain, but it goes up by your nose, right to the very back of your nose. And obviously it takes time for medical professionals to actually go through and do this process. And they're also put at risk because obviously by the very nature of testing people for COVID-19, they're more likely to be exposed to people who do have COVID-19. So one particular company has come up with a robot, and this scares me a little bit, Chris. The idea of a robot that's actually got a swab on the end of its arms there, and it's going up the back of your nose. So you can just imagine the fear factor here. When you're talking to someone, you can say, please stop, it doesn't feel right, are you doing the right thing? But a robot, you don't have that sort of communication with them. The particular company says that they think this will be fantastic for COVID-19 testing. This robot can keep going minute after minute, hour after hour, keep doing test after test with no need for a break, and they can produce more of them, where it's a bit harder to produce more medical professionals at the click of your fingers. So they think it's safe. They've been testing it on all their employees. I'm not sure if I'd want to be an employee in this company, but they've been testing on their employees and they say it's safe. So at some stage in the future, Chris, you go along to have your COVID-19 test, you may actually have a robot doing it.
Well, the race is on, technology versus COVID-19 vaccine. Let's see if that vaccine is out before the robot's designed. How could your smartphone be used to detect if you've been drinking, Matt?
Well, the obvious thing, Chris, seems like you might have some sort of breath analysis process on your phone to actually breathe into. And that's assuming that you actually want to test yourself and you're aware that you've been drinking, you're aware you might be drunk. But there's been some tests conducted at the moment. Stanford University in California and the University of Pittsburgh are doing some testing at the moment on if the accelerometers in a smartphone can pick up your movements being different or unsteady enough that it can actually pick up whether or not you're drunk. And you see the American police shows where they pull someone out of the car and they say, put your finger in your nose or walk along this straight line for 10 yards. And of course, we're a bit more sophisticated than that. We actually do breath tests on the side of the road. But a smartphone, they're talking about this smartphone capability to actually pick up the change in your gait, the change in your walking style, the unsteadiness that you might have, to pick up when you're actually, in America they're talking about 0.08, so obviously Australia we're at 0.05, but they're able to pick up people when they're above 0.08 just by the way they walk. And the advantage of that is that you don't have to be thinking about whether or not you've had too much to drink or not. Your phone can alert you. If you jump in a car, for example, your phone can alert you that you've actually had too much to drink and you need to obviously get out of the car and not drive the car, but actually be aware of how much you've had to drink just by the fact that your walking style is different enough.
Right. Now, I've said to you before, my young son, 11-year-old, is a great PlayStation gamer and he loves it. Is there any challenger to the Xbox and PS5 gaming console duopoly?
Well, that's been around for a while, the constant competition between Xbox and PlayStation. So, and that's good. That's always healthy for gamers. But I'm a little bit older than your son, Chris, and back in my day, Atari was the big gaming console. And of course, there were some Atari classics that I remember playing when I was growing up, and they were pretty basic graphics, but they were things like Asteroids was an absolute Atari classic, things like, or Mining Asteroids I think was another one. But some of those games are going to come back as well as some new ones with a new Atari console. And Atari have typically brought out some other little bits and pieces games, some old classics trying to revive that sort of classic idea. But they're bringing out a real console that's going to compete with Xbox, going to compete with PlayStation, and also have some of those old favourites. And I thought this was very clever marketing by them because people like me will remember the Ataris and they'll say, oh, gee, I love the idea of that. I love the idea of playing some of those old games. But also the new gaming generation coming through will actually be able to play with some of those newer games that are coming out as well. So quite clever marketing by Atari. We'll see this out in a couple of months' time. Whether they can start to knock off that market dominance by PlayStation and Xbox, I'm not convinced of that, but I still think there's a place for Atari in the gaming console environment.
Yeah, games like Space Invaders and Frogger, they were big back in the 80s. I remember them very well. Let's hope it comes out pretty soon. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Listen, Matt, thanks for your time today, mate. Of course, you're contactable at md@matthewdickerson.com, and you're on YouTube as well, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. These videos that we do here, Chris, they go up on YouTube after your listeners have had a chance to listen to them, so they're available there, and past episodes from 2WB as well are all there.
Thanks for your time today, Matt.
Thanks, Chris.
That's Tech Talk with Matt Dickerson, Outback Radio, 2WEB.